So this is the small cabinet that I'm building. So these two little cabinets are going to go beside the big cabinets, which I've already built. So they're these right here. you can install the dado set. So in building this cabinet, I'm trying to be efficient. So I was doing a lot of my parts all at once. And it really only matters if you have the right dimensions. If you make them early but they're the wrong dimensions, it won't help you. It'll hurt you. So hopefully all my dimensions are good. Making sure all my teeth are separated. None of them are touching. Alright, now I'm going to set the depth of it. Now use my little line for the top dead center. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch deep dado. So I'm going to use my little gauge here. And just run it by. If it picks up the gauge just barely, that's my mark. If it picks it up a little too much, drop it there. There it is. Okay. Now what I'll do is set my grip fence so that it's to the top of the blade. I want that to be 6 inches exactly. You go ahead and do the tape measure. So that's good right there. Now I can go ahead and run my parts. So this is the small cabinet that I'm building. So these two little cabinets are going to go beside the big cabinets, which I've already built. So they're these right here. So I'm going to make this dado right now, and then I'm going to do this rabbet next, and then I'm going to do the back rabbet for the 1/2 inch panel. Those are my steps. So basically what I do is I have a pair match here. So I've got 2 cabinets, I've got a left side and a right side. And I'm going to pair it up, right? So it's like a book. Left side and a right side. And I'm going to open it up. So this is where the backs go. Back. Top rabbet, and then bottom. So I do that with both sides of the cabinet, both cabinets. Now I'm ready to do the first 6 inch up, that's going to be that. And then I'll do the next one. Okay, now I'm going to set up for the rabbet on the top. So I need to make it so that it's flush when I put the top on. So it needs to match perfectly the thickness. So I'm going to move this over here. And I'm just going to sight down. Because I know this piece is a little bit thicker than my pieces. I'm going to leave a little bit of teeth under the fence. And I'm going to just make a test cut. It won't be good, but it'll be a test cut. And also, that guy right there, I'm going to go ahead and leave reset that. Okay, so that's good. Now I'm going to go ahead and make a test cut. Okay, this next setup is for the back panel, and it's a 1/2 inch strip. So what's going to happen is I'm going to make this cut. It's going to do a 1/2 inch wide, but I want to raise it up so that I have a deeper cut. So I'm going to raise this up. That last part that I just did were the top and bottom pieces with the rabbets in the back side. So now we're ready for assembly. Okay, I've got all my stuff. I've got my clamping squares, my clamps, my nail gun, got some glue, and I'm ready to go. So this is probably the easiest assembly for any cabinet, a simple bookcase. So I'm doing this face down. You want to be careful of that front edge. So we go ahead, put this. So when you do it face down, you're going to end up with your rabbet facing up to the back. And that's going to give you the ability to put the back right on immediately without having to flip it over. So there's an advantage of leaving it face down like this. You just got to be careful. Now when you square this up, I just pull it in tight with my handy holes that I made in here. And I just clamp it just like that. And with the dado joinery, it makes it go pretty easy. Three nails, all that you need. Okay, now I'm going to put glue on the other side. You're going to be careful with the front edge. If you don't have any of these clamping squares, I suggest that you make them. These are so easy to make. And I use them on every single job that I do. Even if they're not cabinets, I still use them for lots of stuff. Alright, make sure that you're flush on that rabbets here. Make sure that they're flush. If they're flush, the front one's flush. Sometimes it's nice to bring it up a little high and tap it flush after you get one nail in. And nail them all. Now what I'm going to do is carefully move this thing, spin it put the top on, do it at an angle so that it doesn't push the glue in. So I'm going to go in at an angle here, right? Because sometimes if you push it in square, it'll just push the glue right in. And now spread this one open so you can get it in. Now close it up. So I'm going to lock this in with the pin nail grab. Get that locked in. Now I'm going to put the clamp on it. You probably don't need a clamp here because you've got those, but you know, I've got them. All right, now as far as these go, I need a block of wood, and that's my way of doing it anyways. I just push up against here and make that tight. So I use a thick piece of wood and I just hold this as I push it, and then I can push this joint nice and tight. Alright, so now that's nice and tight. What I'm going to do is actually push it this way now with the nail, and this nail is going to be angled slightly. So that nail goes in there at a slight angle. Those top nails are optional. So I need to check the fit on the back to make sure it's the right fit. Let's see what we have here. Alright, that fits nice. So I purposely undersized the back just to give it a little extra room, and I always put glue on the back. So even though these are bookcases, a lot of the same techniques, all the same techniques you would use for kitchen cabinets, you would just use a different material. You would not use this material for wet areas. So if it's a bathroom vanity or a kitchen, you wouldn't use this material. But for cabinets like libraries, bookcases, this is a great material. For offices, So now that I have this in here, I'm just going to check the square on the cabinet. See how we are. So that's 44 and 11/16. 44 and 13/16. So I want to take the 13/16 side and I want to push it until I'm at 3/4, and that actually not too far. So that's 3/4. Let's check this. Right there. Now we can go ahead and nail this on. So this is 1¼ brads that I'm using, and totally acceptable for using 1¼ brads on this. Go straight down. Remember, you have that extra wide rabbet that I put in. So you have lots of glue surface area and you have lots of nailing area. Make sure that your panels are straight. Touch of a butter. Extra wide rabbet is really hard to good right there. So that looks great. So this cabinet is done, except for the face frame, and that will do. Let's flip it over, and let's see if there's any glue squeeze out. Now, the technique that I use, where I use my finger and I rub the glue, I take the bead off of the glue, and look at this. No glue squeeze out. Nice. So I'm going to put down here that we're going to need to do holes, so I don't forget. Because you know, sometimes you get ahead of yourself and you go to a job site and you forget that you were supposed to do holes. All right, I'm going to move this to the side. Now we can build the other one. All right, we're good. Nice. That looks great. Okay. Hold. Now we can check the fit of the shelves we made also. Okay. Perfect. All right. So I actually made 2 shelves, but honestly, I doubt they'll need 2 shelves. It'll probably just be 1 shelf, but whatever. It's better to make more shelves and not need them than to not make enough shelves and need them. All right. So this is good. We're ready for the face frame. I've already got all the parts labeled, and so I just need to cut them all. Okay, I'm just going to go grab some lumber off my rack. Either way, if you're going to paint it, poplar's a great wood for the face frame, and or maple, and even alder can work too, but I don't really enjoy working with alder as much. And it's also a little harder to find big pieces because the trees are so small. Okay, so I'm going to grab this down and cut it up. Okay, so now that I have this off, I want to check the ends. You're checking for snipe, and I'm also checking for splits. But this actually looks really good. No snipe and no splits. So that's nice. But I'm also looking at the fact that it's really tapered, right? It goes from wider here and then it really comes in. So that's all unusable, but it's also really skinny. So I want to just take my cut list, and I need 4 pieces at 34 15/16, and I need 2 pieces at 2.5. So I'm going to put a line here that basically says that I could use almost this entire length. So that happens to be 5.5 inches, so I could get 2 5.5 rips out of that. I mean, 2.5 rips. So I'm going to do that 24.5 by 2.5. 24.5 by 2.5. Okay. And then I'm just going to put a line. And that's going to go all the way out to 24.5. So I'm going to put it at 25.5. Just put a mark. And then that's going to be my rough cut right there. And all this material that's nasty, this is all going to go away. Now I want to go for my next cut. I'm going to mark this off that I've done that. Check mark. And then 34 15. So I'm going to make my mark at 35 or 36 inches. Okay. Now I need 4 at 1 3/4. So I know that I don't think I'll be able to do. If I use my thin kerf ripping blade, I don't think so. That's okay. So I'll get 3 out of that one. Okay. And then to round it out, I'm going to do 1 more of those. $24.5 by 1.5. Okay, now a lot of times I like to rip off of both sides, but because this board is narrow, I'm going to go ahead and rip off one side, and wish me luck, because sometimes the boards don't want to work well that way. So we'll see how this board does. But the first step I'm going to do is cross cut these guys to rough length so I can make it more manageable, and then I'll joint the edges. Okay, I want to show you something. I just went really fast so I could show you what happens if you go too fast. You see all those lines? I'm not sure if you could pick that up, but there's really bad mill marks. And those are nasty. So go slower on the joiner. Don't speed it up, because you'll get really bad results if you do. And mind the grain direction as well. You want the grain to be going downhill as you're running it. So if there's no other option, and this particular grain is going sideways, there really is no downhill or uphill. You just got to do your best. But if it starts up here and it goes downhill, that's what you want, because the cutter is going to cut it like that, and it's going to follow that downhill motion. If it's going If the grain's going uphill and it's going like this, it's going to tear the fibers out as you run it. Okay, now we're ready to rip this poplar to width, and I'm going to set it up for a 2.5 inch cut because that would be my biggest size. I'm going to go ahead and do that first. I usually start with the biggest first, and this is where the Wixie really shines. I found it to be very accurate into these low numbers. So I've got it set to 2.5, and let me just double check this. Let's see, that looks really good. So also what I do like to do is just take a test cut with that right there, and I can tell whether or not that's 2.5. I'll just take my tape measure and measure it. But all right, we're ready to run these. I'll do a test cut anyways. Okay, so that first board you saw me rip, that thing twisted so much that it was crazy. So I went ahead and ripped off a clean edge on the opposite side and then did my normal reverse, and then it straightened out the boards. But there's still a twist in them. However, these ones, look at that curve right there. So I'm going to go ahead and joint this off and make it straight. So to straighten this, what you want to do is you want to just take it over the jointer and just kind of run that front edge. Don't push down like that, because if you push down, it's just going to go right back up and you're just going to have another curve. So only put pressure against the fence, but don't push down, and let it go across, and it'll take material off there and it'll take material off here, and then do one more pass and then you'll make it straight. And the same thing with this. And of course, check out the grain direction. All right, now to finish this up, I need to cut these guys to length. So they were just rough cut, leaving about 3/4 of an inch or so extra, and that's going to allow me to work with these pieces a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead, I'll square one end up, make sure there's no checks or splits or anything. And then once that's squared up, I'll take my tape measure, mark the length, and then I'm going to set a stop up for the correct length. All right, 34 and 15/16, that's the number. Shadow there. Set my stop block. Now I can check it for length. Good. Now, one thing also to note is that the inside, I write down in for inside. This is going to be the inside edge. This is the nice clean jointed edge. This is the sawn edge. This is going to go on the outside of the cabinet. So this will be the interior and this will be the outside. Okay, we're ready to go. Now, if you have a portable Craig jig, that works too. I have this machine, I'm just going to use it, but we need to make pocket holes in this. So this is going to be the back of the top rail, and then this is the bottom rail. So this piece here gets that's only 1.5 inches wide. We need to make sure that we're a little bit close to the inside edge. So just to be careful, we don't want to chip out that top. So inside, I'm going to go ahead and put a hole really close. Go slow though, we don't want to break it out. So you can see that I'm shifted on that inside edge, and we'll do the same thing over here. Okay, we're ready for assembly. So for this assembly, what we want to do is we want to take these pieces and we want to pair them up. And so we're going to take all the inside edges and we're going to face them in. So we're going to face it in towards each other. So do it like this, right? We'll go in like that. And that will leave two pieces that are going to be inside. And then this one, the same thing. Two inside pieces. So now we have a left and a right cabinet. Now for location purposes, what I like to do is just put down here, bottom, top. Now I'm going to go to the workpiece, which is right over there, and I'm going to take this guy, top, bottom. I'm just going to take this guy and I'm going to put a mark right where that bottom shelf is. Make sure it's flush at the top. There we go. Okay, so that's my mark right there. Put an X, that's going to be the bottom. Now, I'm going to take this mark and I'm going to transfer it to its buddy. And sometimes it's good to not have gloves on for this kind of a thing, because I want to be able to feel the flushness of it. Okay, so that's good there. I can take it and roll this over. So now I've got two pieces that are good. Now I can do the same exact thing for these ones as well, but I can also just take it, since they're exactly the same, and I can flush this up, just like that. Now I just want to make sure that if you do that, that they're actually the same and you haven't made an error. All right, now flush this up with this pair. And then roll it over. Okay. So that's it. So this is going to be the top. Now for this one, want to make sure inside's facing in. And now we can flush these up at the top and secure those with glue and screws. And then we'll take the bottom and we'll make sure it's inside. And we'll put that in down there. They are very, very nice to use. However, you don't have to use them. You can use other clamps if you have them. Okay, now also put a little glue on these. You're going to need glue. Obviously, just trying to get this flush. There it is. All right, now I'm using 1¼ inch screws. Now, if you hear any cracking, we're going to stop. Sometimes they shift when you screw them. I'm just going to back that one out and tap it. Now, this one might crack, so this is optional, putting this one in. Very, very dangerous. screw with your rag. Get that little glue that squeezes out. It's important to get that out of there because it'll be a problem if it dries. Okay. Now we'll do this other one. Flip this guy over. Rotate that in, so that'll be just like that. Distance, however, I'm making only 2, and there's no dividers going in. If there were dividers, I would definitely make the spacers, but for this, I'm going to use my marks, and then I'm going to check it with the tape measure, just because. But a spacer block would definitely be good too, if you had, if you had access to one, or you could make one, All right, that looks good right there. Perfect. Now for this, I'm going to put the one next to the line first. Right there. And then the second one here, and see where we're at. All right, that is 27 and just over 7/16. Check this, 27. Just over 7/16, that's exactly right. All right, sweet. Glue squeeze out, looks good. Probably have a little bit right there. Again, it's impossible to get without using some sort of a sharp tool. It just is that little bit in there. All right, and again, I'm not scratching it, I'm not even going through the shop towel, I'm just pushing it in. All right, so that's good, very good. So before I make another one, I'm just going to double check this fit, make sure that it's right. All right, we're good to go. Perfect. One more. That's kind of our reference point. The top's going to be the reference point, and then this is going to fall into correct position. But this needs to be flush. So we'll start with that. And I have my jointed and these sticks right here, they're the same width, and I just use these to raise up the cabinet while I clamp and glue these guys. So it raises them up, and now I know that it's on a flat surface, so it's good. You can also sight down too. If you're not too sure, you can always sight down and just do a check to see if it's twisted at all. So you can tell if this, if it's up higher, or if there's an area where you need to shim it. But it should be good, provided your workbench is good. All right, we'll do a dry run here. So this is the left cabinet. Okay. The right cabinet has the visible side. The left cabinet is up against the wall in between another cabinet, so there's no visible side. All right, so this is good. But I want to have the lip, I want to have just a touch of the lip on the side that touches the cabinet so that I have a nice reference point. Don't need to go overkill on the glue. Flush at the top, flush on the sides, just to start. So clamp will lock it down. Flush on top. Okay. Come over to this, make sure this is flush. Again, these are all going to be hidden, so no problem. Everything's going to be hidden. Don't worry about joint. Okay. Now, be the same as that one, so I want to be flush. I'll add one more clamp for good measure. Sure that panel is straight. The reveal is the same. That's good. So we can take this piece and move it off to the side. Really good. That's great. Put some glue on this. And now that, because it's going to be flush trimmed, and we want to make sure that the joint's tight, and that it's going to really affect it, right? So if the joint isn't tight, it's going to get a V groove. If it wasn't getting a V groove, I would make sure there was glue squeeze out. But because there's a V groove going on it, I'm not worried about glue squeeze out. Glue squeeze out really helps the seam. I can achieve almost an imperceivable joint. Now I'm going to put 2 clamps just to give a little extra pressure. That's really good. So 2 done, and it's 11:24, and I started at about a little after 8. So 2 cabinets built in about 3 hours. That's pretty impressive considering I had a break in there. That is not bad at all. And once the clamps are off and the glue is set, be able to flush trim that. Sweet. All right, thanks for watching. And this is a quick cabinet job you guys can do. Anybody can build bookcases quickly. It doesn't take too much. Obviously, you're going to have to learn how to do certain things, but I mean, this is a very relatively easy job to do, and built well too, right? This is not like cheaply made at all. Okay, it's time to flush trim this. Got my V-groove set up, and then I'll sand it afterwards. I have this clamped as well so it won't fall. Move back. All right, I got to sand the face frames. I'm going to do that with my 6-inch sander. Now this burn actually goes into the wood, but this was jointed perfect. So although it's a little bit burned, it's actually from the heat, but there's no saw marks. So there's no sandpaper on the edges. It's perfectly cut, crisp. And you want to do that backside real well. This area, especially without a door on it, you know, you're always going to be rubbing the surfaces. When we get to the top, you want to just kind of do that with it, rather than just because it's flat here. You want to make sure that that corner gets exactly the same radius as everything else. So that's done. The next step I might as well do is I got to drill holes for the shelves because I did not use my machine for this. For all these pieces, I'm going to have to do it by hand. So before I do that though, I'm going to put a stop block, a clamp on my workbench to keep this from moving. So I'm going to get that set up. Okay, I'm just doing the holes, and I just took some time to figure out where I wanted to drill them. This is going to have open bookcase, right? So there's going to be 2 shelves actually in this tight space. Now they might decide only to use 1, but whatever. These cabinets are 35 inches tall. It's a reasonable amount of space. But I've got my portable jig, and you've seen these before. Very, very useful. So when I use these, I take and I cover up the holes I'm not going to use. So for instance, I'm not going to use these last 3 holes. Now this jig has been cut. It's been modified to fit things, and I have it marked bottom with an arrow down. And this is where you connect it to increase the height. So as you drill all your holes, you move it up and then put a pin in it to lock it in. So you got to make sure that you leave those. And also note that if you go every other hole, just make sure that you're going in the every other hole that works to continuously run it, because that requires that middle one to be gone. So you'll know what I'm talking about when you make that mistake. But anyways, so what I have here is a 2 9/16 spacer, and it's just going to go right there, holds it up, and I just mark top with arrow. That way I don't inadvertently do it another way. So it goes like that. And now I'm going to take my drill, and I'm going to start at the bottom hole, and I'm going to go up all of them until I get to this last one that's not covered up. So where that's covered, I'm going to stop. And then I'm going to flip it over, slide this down, and do the same thing. And I've got this taped. So it's taped on both sides. And then I'll just come over here and I'll just repeat it. Now this will work for this cabinet, and then this height will continue with the other cabinets as well, so that they're equal, the lower cabinets. So that starting height is going to be the same. Now the stopping point is, you can see a mark there. That's going to be my stopping point, and that's going to make it so this goes up. I use all those holes, and then I come up, and the last hole I drilled, I'm going to put the pin in, and that's going to give me my continuation all the way to the last hole again. So there's very convenient that it stops at the same spot that it stopped the first time. So I just took some figuring to do that, but you'll get your spacing, whatever. And sometimes I don't use every hole, but sometimes it's nice to have them for adjustability. That 1.25 inches sometimes can be a little bit too many holes, but either way, whatever you want to do. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and drill, and I'm going to make sure I lube up my drill bit. Again, that magic lube makes a difference. So I'll be right back. Okay, now to spray this, I'm going to go ahead. This has probably already been done recently, but I'm going to go ahead and do it again. I'm actually going to spray this whole thing. Try not to get overspray, because this will make the floor really slippery if you get it on the floor, and you definitely don't want to get this on the cabinet. So let that kind of bake in there for just a minute, and I'm going to kind of wipe it. And this stuff kind of turns powdery, chalky almost when it gets dry. So if you see it around, if you've used this stuff, you know what I mean. The stuff gets a little powdery, but that's an indication that it's dry. So do this a couple times if you want to, but this is really cool. The chips eject really well with this stuff. I tell you, this is like the best stuff since sliced bread. Okay, oh, one more thing. This pin, sometimes it's annoying because it wants to come out. So what I do is I take tape, and I actually tape it in. So I put it in the hole, and now what I do is I actually take tape, and I give it a little bit of flexibility. So when you take this and you flip it around, you have to take this out. So after a while, the tape gets kind of bad, but it helps. So I'm going to go ahead and start drilling. And this is kind of a messy job, but watch how the chips eject. Okay, that you can never achieve without using that lube. Trust me on this. Okay, now obviously I need to continue that, so now I'm going to raise it up. So that last hole I want to put the pin in, so I'm going to go ahead and just drop it in, just like that. And you see how nice that pin is? Now I can continue my holes. All right, wipe that. And now that's very clean. And I'll do the other ones. So since I have to take this off every time I spin it, I'm just going to go ahead and go to the opposite corner, and I'm going to do that one right now. Now, also, you'll notice I have these cabinets clamped. So literally I have these clamps behind the face frame so they don't move. Otherwise, you could never do this. Be very difficult. See that how I don't have to hold the cabinet? Okay, now I can go ahead and take this out and spin this whole thing. Now the tape, like I said, it goes bad quickly. The dust gets in it and it kind of goes bad, but that's okay. Flip it over, put it right back in that hole. And there you go. Now I'm going to start here because that's where I started. And I'm just going to do this all the way around. Okay, well, I'm going to crank on these and I'll be back when I'm done. So this is a 5mm bit, by the way, not a 1/4 inch. I don't use a 1/4 inch. I prefer the 5mm.
Do you want that light on?
No, I think it's good actually. It helps. Actually, I know. This is the kind of stuff that you have to see in close up, you know. These cameras, they don't zoom in. So you got to get close. I like this trim as well. That looks nice. I know your friends have that same thing.
Sam, yeah.
Yeah, that really looks sharp on there. Absolutely.
Can't wait till he paints it. It's gonna look pretty.
Yeah.